Hey there, welcome to episode 18 of the Quaggling Sand audio program. Hang on for a little audio throwback. The dulcet tones of your dial-up modem handshaking when you dial into AOL or wherever it is you were calling. Today we are talking about the journey from 1200 baud to crazy fast on this, the 12th of March, 2024. Some will remember, some were not there. There was a time when our little modem would dial a phone number, negotiate a transfer protocol, which is what you heard, and leave us online to wander and surf. Then one day the modem was always connected at substantially higher speeds. And that's essentially where we are today, always faster. Check your description of your audio program wherever you found this episode for the links section. I have several Wikipedia links, in fact, all Wikipedia links. For some modem history and background. First, with my shameless self-promotion, buymeacoffee.com/Dan Hugo. It is in need of a minor update for some things that are coming along, but that's where I keep links to my projects and the 4 audio programs I produce each week, different channels, so you can check that out, GitHub links, etc., coffee links. You're under no obligation to spend any money, but if you want to, any funds that arrive through the buymeacoffee.com/Dan Hugo path are applied to coffee, which is what powers all of my projects. As well, my ko-fi.com/Dan Hugo profile as well, ko-fi.com/Dan Hugo. And we'll run through a couple of these links real quick. Modem handshake example, which you heard. I took the audio from I think it was 11 years ago, YouTube file, which is pretty interesting to look at as well. It's a spectrograph visualization of the various audio bands at play during a dial-up and handshake sequence. It's pretty interesting. Throwback to my engineering education days when our communication class was not getting in front of people and speaking, but playing with quadrature, amplitude modulation, quadrature phase shift keying, Nyquist, data rates, baud, link equations for satellites, etc. Good times. But for today, casual references to, these are Wikipedia links. I'll just run through them. The dial-up modems, kind of some history. The old school, post-acoustic modem. 300, I think, was the lowest. Dial-up modem. I think Hayes had a 300 baud modem. 300 all the way up to the end of the line for normal people. The 56K modem, which was actually limited because of, I believe it was because of the notch at 60 hertz was what threw it off, and it made it 53.3 kilobits per second, I believe. And you should always, for the purposes of history, be familiar with the difference between baud, which is symbols per second, and bits per second. One symbol contains many bits, and depending on which modem standard you're using, the V42, V42 bis, V32, all those good old days references, that would determine the symbol density, bit density. So how much, what your actual data bits per symbol rate was, and then your baud was the number of symbols per second. And so if I'm remembering, I can't remember if it was 2400, there's a maximum baud rate for dial-up voice lines, which I believe are by design sort of band limited, practicality wise, 400 to 4000 hertz. So the channel through which you can send data is sort of fixed, but also noisy and varies with the length of the run. So where your modem is connecting to your house wiring or wherever you are dialing in from, and then all the way to some central switching, etc. So part of the challenge of that time was to make the most of the wiring that was already installed in people's homes. So very challenging times indeed. So the history of the dial-up modem, there's ISDN, the Integrated Services Digital Network, which some people ended up having. I believe it was pretty expensive back then. I know I did not get an ISDN line, probably because it was too expensive. Eventually, there would be digital subscriber lines, which could take advantage of your pre-existing wiring. So the classic copper twisted pair that most homes have. Most homes up until recently, maybe. I don't even know if they wire homes for telephony anymore. So you could make use of the existing infrastructure and with limitations, which I learned all about when we got our DSL line in Sunnyvale. The cable modem, so using cable modems, the existing cable infrastructure, which I was living in New Jersey with my parents back in 1970. I want to say it was like 75, 76, when we first got our cable installed in our home. It was not, I was not on the lease, on the, what do you call it? Deed. But we got to use it. First view of HBO. Nobody knows what that is anymore. I think it's Max now. First HBO right to your television. Amazing. So the cable, quote unquote, cable infrastructure has been in place for decades, 50 years now, almost 50, at least. And so being able to take advantage of that for data transfer at higher rates, higher data rates, more reliably over longer distances, sort of made DSL a tricky sell, but sell as in to sell something, to have people buy something, not to be confused with sell data. So DSL was definitely cool. Cable modems, easier to deal with, although they have their own problems, bandwidth sharing and so on. But it's always about the run length, the distance between you and your switching station, central office, what have you. So we've come a long way, though. And then, of course, nowadays, everybody has a mobile device in their pocket. Mobile cell data is a thing. Back in the day, it used to be GSM, TDMA, time division multiple access, CDMA, code division multiple access, if I recall. And now it's, what is it called? I can't remember. It's whatever G5, 5G, sorry. Generation 5 cell networks. What was 4? It was LTE. So LTE was a sort of a bridge. Hopefully everybody on the planet is using something similar. I will continue to maintain that it was this lack of unification back in the old days that slowed down, literally, but also as far as evolution of connectivity, the segmentation of the market into TDMA, CDMA, GSM 1900 for T-Mobile, which was at the time VoiceStream, I believe, because I did have a VoiceStream number account. Anyway, so yeah, cell data has come a very long way. Wi-Fi, possibly even longer. I have to talk about that one day. I was overjoyed when a friend of mine who was working at Apple got me her employee discount on the little Wi-Fi spaceship. It was a little very odd-looking gray device with it literally had a PCMCIA card inside, and I don't remember what PCMCIA stands for, but it was basically Isobus on a pluggable peripheral card. So the card was in the little pyramid-shaped goofball spaceship thing, and I had that, and I had a laptop at the time, so I had an external PCMCIA card so I could connect wirelessly to my network. Oh, crazy times. And then, of course, now I think Google is pushing really hard now, getting Google Fiber. So fiber optics, the way of the future, and maybe it always will be. So now on with the show. First of all, as you heard, the tones of the handshake, if you ever picked up a phone and you heard, "Mom, I'm using the modem." Memories. The tones, or nowadays, if you are connecting to someone, you're trying to call a company, a storefront that doesn't have an internet connection, maybe they're old school, so they're using a dial-up modem in their credit card processing terminal. So they happen to be using the same phone number as their voice line. So you'd call up and you hear kind of a shh, shh, shh. That is the data transmit and receive those tones on a twisted pair phone line, or nowadays it's probably twisted pair to some fiber. The joys of the good old days, trying to connect sometimes hanging up, trying to restart. I had a 1200 baud modem, which I've talked about earlier in a previous episode at some point. Mitsuba, I saved up all my McDonald's money to get my modem so I could explore the world from the what we called the fourth bedroom. And eventually I would have a Telebit 19.2, which was sort of magical at the time. It was faster than you could really get from a normal consumer grade modem. Then I would eventually, and I never got the Zycel or any, I didn't proceed down that path. I went back to normal consumer modems, tried a few modems from Fry's Electronics in Sunnyvale when I moved there. Eventually ended up with the 56K, which was really 53.3 kilobits per second due to the notch, as I think I said. There's a notch filter on on dial-up phone lines, twisted pair copper, so that you don't get a buzz or a hum from your house alternating current wiring, which is oscillating at 60 hertz. Modem technology is actually pretty cool. If you do want to look into this, you can start with that modem history page on Wikipedia. Really, the magic of modems is making the most of a channel that is noisy and band limited, and making the most of the channel capacity using quadrature amplitude modulation and quadrature phase shift keying, QAM and QPSK. So you can dive into those a little bit. Then the handshake protocols and the error correction, all the stuff that made downloading your FidoNet discussions or uploading your pirated game to your pirate BBS bulletin board system. All the magic is fascinating. It's a fascinating use of radio technologies and modems. By the way, total side note, a modem is still in your phone. If you have a mobile device, modem with a classic AT command set, still in there. The legacy continues, although you probably will not issue an ATDT command to dial. But still, pretty cool way to start. My 1200 baud modem, I was able to get it because 2400 baud, Hayes had just launched 2400. So 1200 became cheap. It was reasonable. Someday, I think everyone should be required to operate their internet connection, modem on their phone, whatever. They should be able to be limited, or they should be required to be limited to maybe 2400 is pretty slow, but maybe 14.4. That was another classic milestone for consumer modems. So 14.4, 33.6, but to be limited to those speeds to somehow, and this wouldn't happen, of course, because this is today, but to somehow appreciate where things have evolved to so far. Back in my day, but something to think about, which you will not. That's okay. Eventually, when I was in, so I learned a bunch of modem related stuff, like I mentioned in college. So the early 90s, I was learning about all this stuff, still rocking the normal human modem, the Telebit, and then eventually, I don't think I had a 14.4, but I did get a 33.6 eventually, and that's the modem that I used the most when I was in Silicon Valley. The 56K modems would come out pretty late in the game. By the time those were sort of stabilizing, functionality. As these modems got more tricky, it was really important to have a ISP, an internet service provider. I don't even know if those still exist. AOL or similar. As long as your dial-up ISP had a compatible modem, then you could achieve these speeds. But if there was a standards sort of shuffle going on, and like we're going with the V56, I'm sorry, whatever it was, what was 56K? I can't remember. We're going with the US Robotics 56K. But if you went with a different vendor, then it may not negotiate all the way up to maximum speed, and you'd be like, oh, I'm only getting 33.6, and I paid for. So I kind of held off, and I actually made use of the liberal return policy of Fry's Electronics at the time. So I do remember purchasing 2 or 3 different 56K modems, trying out the one that worked the best with my ISP at the time, bringing back the other two. And I think it was a US Robotics because that was the most popular. And that was that. But eventually I would move to a home, to a house, a standalone house that happened to be within the limits of the DSL run, which I think was 1,500 feet at the time. So I was not yet working at Netscape. No, I was working at Netscape, and then I moved on. But when I was working at Netscape, I had my 33.6 modem. And so before Netscape and after, I stuck with 33.6. I probably could have gotten ISDN if I really wanted to, but I also lived something like 3 miles away from the Middlefield offices. So probably a hard sell. But integrated services digital networking was very popular. The San Francisco contingent of especially some of the founding engineers who wanted to work from home. One of my coworkers, you may remember Rotten.com, or perhaps one of his other projects. They had a Spark station, a Sun computer, whatever it was, Sun system, Sun Microsystems, yeah. Sun Spark station at his house with a T1 line. A T1 line today would be like, no biggie. But a T1 to your house at the time was a non-trivial investment in not only the hardware, because you had to have the equivalent of a T1 modem, and the installation of a T1, which was a specific wiring run. There were T1 lines. Then you could get a T3, which was bundled T1s, all kinds of stuff just to get to more data. Yeah, it's extra plumbing into your office or home or wherever. So that was not going to happen for me living in an apartment, but it was a mark of immortality. And certainly when your T1 line was overwhelmed by Howard Stern fans, which is a story for another time. So that was a fun story from him. So my coworker, his T1 line. But fast connections in general were not common, and that's part of the story with the T1 being saturated. It wasn't the T1 so much, it was the server, because you can only have so many connections at the time. So your fast internet connection is serving a ton of slow internet connections, and fun times ensue. So we didn't really need fast connections in general. The era of what they used to call the QuickTime video, which was like 160 by 160 or something like that, like little squares. Downloading images would go line by line, and the notion of like live streaming camera, conference calls, forget that. So there was really, fast internet was a luxury. Most of us had our 33.6 or eventually 56K dial-up modems, and that was okay. So I skipped over the ISDN phase. I think it was just too expensive. But also, outside of downloading my Linux distribution, which I purchased CDs, but eventually I purchased I did. I purchased an external drive of some sort, I think, and I was able to download files when I was at work at Netscape, which they had a pretty fast internet connection. And yeah, that was certainly a harbinger. That was like, this fast internet is pretty convenient for some things. I was not fully grasping the change of existence that would come when everyone could access data as we were there at Netscape, or at many offices, especially larger ones, who were just jumping on the internet craze back at the time. So interesting. When we moved into, my roommate and I moved into a standalone house in Sunnyvale, it was very near Fry's Electronics on Wolf, if you are from the Bay Area. We did live within 1,500 feet of the switch of the office. And so when the opportunity to get on a pilot program for DSL deployment to residential customers came about, it was, there was no question. So DSL is kind of a trick. It makes use of those copper lines that everybody already had at the time with the constraints. You could not have, and I looked around, I cannot find the spelling. So this may have been jargon, or it may have been a particular brand. I can't remember. But if you were in a home that had, I think the typical was wired for 2 phone lines, even though you'd have some homes would have 25 pair wire, but a lot of homes would have they'd split one wire off the curb, and you would have 4 wires, and you could have 2 phone lines. So if you needed to have more phone lines, say, oh, I need to have a fax line for my home office, they would do what's called a Daimler, or what they call the Daimler. They would shift the signaling on the phone, on the wiring, so that 2 phone lines would share bandwidth, or would share voice bandwidth. So this was sufficient for voice. So I think what they would do is they would make 2 Daimler lines, voice lines, and then the other line could be a fax line, for example, for data. So I don't know if the Daimler affected traditional dial-up. If it should. So I don't remember what the baud rate, but I think faxes were like 300, 600, maybe 1200. So back then you could Daimler phone line. You could add extra phone lines by multiplexing them. I think analog multiplex. So that's a different discussion for another time. But basically, you had to have pristine copper, no Daimlers, no funny business. You had to be within the range. You had to be, the lines had to be clear, the pristine, but you had to have sufficient bandwidth on the line. I think they were really particular about that because they didn't want to roll out to a bunch of people that had poor phone lines and then have a very poor user experience. So you kind of had to qualify. So we were in the first 50 to receive DSL, digital subscriber line, in Sunnyvale, California. We had a installation coordinator named Gail who oversaw the entire process. Even on the day of installation, when the phone people were there, black hats, black sunglasses, crazy. They were almost going to put a Daimler on our line for some reason. I don't know what was going on there, but Gail luckily was like, put me on the phone with them. So she owned it, made it happen. So we got our DSL line, and it was very fast. At the time, I had a Power Mac 7500, a real Apple Power Mac. I was working at UMax, so we also had, did I have an S900? I didn't have an S900 at home, but I was using various PowerPC machines at home. But I had a Power Mac 7500 that I had gotten at somewhere along the way. So I turned that into a Linux PPC routing host. So that's where the DSL line would connect to, and it would do some NAT, some network address translation. And we put all of my roommate and I had our computers in the house and whatever else we wanted to connect to the internets. So now we had this ridiculous, and I think it was 384 kilobits per second, but in both directions. So this was a symmetric connection, which is rare nowadays. But we didn't have to dial up or anything. So this was fun because suddenly we're like, oh, let's download this. And minutes turn into seconds. Let me download an entire Linux distribution. Bam. Human time, not so slow that I have to go buy CDs and have them mailed to me. So a nice symmetric connection would mean also that we could have our own servers. We could download from other places. Like you could be at work and say, oh, I forgot that file on my computer at home. So you could SSH into your home server, and you could have web pages running and all that stuff. So good times, totally fun, really almost shocking, just really like unbelievable that you could be sitting at home and do this. And there was no Netflix, there was no YouTube, there was no like, oh, I need to download entire movies. Although at the time there was a Quest commercial. Quest was a communications company in the Southwest. And they used to have these commercials that you could download every movie ever created at any time using Quest Fiber, which was interesting. I don't think that ever really got fully deployed. I don't think they're around. I don't think they're around anymore. But the promise of fast internet started to become clear once you're not dialing up, you're never offline. So a bit of a game changer. So we had our first trouble with the internet. So here's the deal. So the 384 was supposed to be always on, unusual but symmetric. Later, you'd have like 1 megabit down and 50 kilobits up or something like that, because the casual consumer is not running web servers and all that. Luckily, there's enough upload, I guess. There's upstream bandwidth. You're allowed to transmit data from your computer to some host, which enables you to use your webcam and have video conferencing and all that. If they really had limited the upload, so basically if you take the total bandwidth available, some fraction of it is down and some fraction of it is up, so that you can do both at the same time. And so because you want to have the maximum number of connections and charge your customers the most, you figure, oh, you're just going to be downloading movies anyway. So we'll give you this ridiculous download speed, but you're just a person. Nobody cares what you think. So very small upload. So I honestly don't remember. I think I have like 30 megabits up or something. I can't remember. I have sufficient bandwidth to do live video. That's fine. We also had a static IP address, which was nice. You could literally put that address into your domain name service, DNS. You could host your website on your home computer. They weren't blocking ports. Nowadays, you see this no block ports. So we had all the ports. We had static address. Oh, it was great. It was wonderful. I had that PowerMac 7500 as our intermediary, our interstitial computer server. So it would act as a router. It had the NAT stuff, like I said. So I had two Ethernet cards. So incoming and outgoing. So it was quite a setup until we started seeing that the modem would drop connection every once in a while, too frequently for our taste. So we had an Alcatel DSL modem, and we were in the first 50. So this is more of a customer service than a technology question. So here's the deal. The modem would just disconnect. So your connection would go down. If you were in the middle of doing something, like maybe you're downloading apt-get update on your Linux machine, right? So you're downloading a bunch of packages, update your system. Maybe you're downloading some email, whatever it was, whatever you're doing, it would just pause. And you could look over and you could see the green lights were off on the modem. And then they would start to blink as it's retraining. So it's doing a handshake, but modern times. So you're, okay, well, I guess our connection dropped. Now, that happens. That's why the modem has this built-in ability to retrain and reconnect to the home office. Today, my cable modem does this sometimes, usually at odd hours. So if they're doing maintenance or they reset the switch or something, this is normal. We're normal people. We're not paying for 100% or 5 nines uptime. So this happens. With this Alcatel modem, it was happening every 20 minutes, maybe more. So I would call the, SPC? I would call customer service and I'd say, hey, my DSL modem is dropping. Now, if we were in the pilot program, but we no longer had the personal services of Gale looking after us. Once the installation coordination happened, we're done. We're up and running. So now I had to call customer service and say, hey, the modem is dropping. And as if written by a SNL sketch writer. So bad comedy. Oh, your modem is fine. I'm checking it right now. Well, yeah, it's up now, but it was down before. Well, it's up now. At every turn. So this is happening multiple times per hour. I don't know if it's 20 minutes, but it was whenever it felt like it would just go offline. It would try to retrain. It could be anywhere from 1 to 3 minutes. So yeah, that starts to get annoying. So what to do? You cannot prove to someone that your modem was down. And it's not clear to me whether the Alcatel modem had a logging facility. I know my cable modem today, it's one of the DOCSIS 3.1 modems. They actually have a log that captures connection information in the modem, so you can actually query it. Unfortunately, the cable company can also peer into your modem and see what's going on, but such is life. So you can actually see when the modem goes down. Here, I don't believe the Alcatel modem was doing that or whatever was happening. To me, it seems obvious that they should have been able to see on their end of the connection that there was a retrain happening. But for whatever reason, the first tier tech support person was not checking that, kind of brushed me off. Your modem is fine. So, remember that PowerMac 7500? I wrote a cron job. It probably didn't need to be a cron job, but that made it easier to just have it run all the time. So I think every minute, I want to say it was every minute, but it may have been probably makes sense that it was every minute. It would ping. Ping is a kind of a classic network tool. Send some ICMP packets, I think it is. So it would ping the gateway. So when you connect a computer to the internet, you have your IP address. So we had our static IP address, and it would connect to a gateway on the home office network, so that all of our internet traffic that was leaving our internal network, which was most of our traffic, would be routed through that gateway address. So that's the first IP address encountered outside of our network. So by pinging that address and by it responding, I was able to show that our connection was up. I wasn't pinging CNN or some website that it could go down. So as long as the gateway was up, I could ping it and I would receive a response. You could determine network delays and stuff this way. So I wrote this script, very simple. It would ping, I think it would send 3 pings, receive the 3 pings, log it. And I think it was doing it every minute. So now, if the modem dropped, you would see a loss of ping data response. So you'd not get the packets back or no response. So now I could show, the modem was down here. So after a couple of days, I have this big log file of, 3 or 4 times an hour, 2 to 4 times an hour, continuously all through the day, all through the night, 24 hours a day. Modem is going up, down, up, down, up, down, up, down. So when I sent them this, finally, at long last, they were like, this doesn't look right. Now I'm going to assume that that escalated beyond the first tier. Hopefully some competent technician went and looked at their logs from their side. So they should be able to see, and this is definitely true today, you should be able to see when your customer connections are going up and down. That helps you diagnose any number of problems, including customer equipment issues, line quality. Certainly if a connection is cut, maybe there's some construction going on or maybe some vandalism, you never know. So the physical connection, the wires could be a problem. The switch end or the end at the home office may have issues. So they're able to diagnose these. So eventually, and this took way too long. In today's terms, it would have been ridiculous. There would have been Yelp reviews and tweets and all manner of chaos. But back then, it was just a quiet argument between myself and the tech support person. But eventually, they would work it out, and they said, the Alcatel modem needs a firmware update. Once they did that, it was all fine. 100%. 99.9, whatever it was. So night and day. But boy, did they make me work for getting this modem update. Nowadays, you can go on the internet, you say, hey, I have an Alcatel modem with DSL from this, and you should have modem version, blah, 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 blah. And you go, I have 2 versions back. Well, you got to contact them and get a firmware update. This even happens on the cable modem that I have. At one point, let me think. So I've had cable modem service from Cox in the Vegas area, in the city of Las Vegas proper, up in the north part of town where I live. 10 years, Cox Business Services, Cox Residential Internet, whatever they call it now. I think I had Cox Business Services in Phoenix when I lived there in 2001 to 2005, because I remember I had a static IP address there. So I think business services meant static IP, no block ports. Nowadays, if you really need to do stuff like that, don't pay for the crazy, business services, 5 times your monthly. So you can spin up a server in the cloud, as they say. But here in Vegas, 10 years from 2014-ish to now, I have Cox cable, very few problems. Some people complain about it. I've had very few problems. The most common problem will be, like I said, the maintenance. Some overnight, usually it's 2 in the morning, the modem will go down. I've noticed every once in a while that there will be a retrain happening for no reason, and then it will continue to retrain, kind of bouncing back and forth between kind of up and then retraining. I've also seen that sometimes this happens, and I have to actually power cycle the modem to get it to actually retrain and reconnect. So this is a problem. It's a problem that probably happens once a year. Maybe it requires a firmware update. Not sure. You can look at the logs in the modem and you can see a fairly detailed but sort of jargony series of log lines that tell, like this happened and that was lost and there's an error here, and then the retrain kind of fails and you power cycle and everything's back to normal. So this tells me that the firmware in the modem probably could use an update. But the problem with that is that the cable company controls the firmware version. So they have to qualify a particular version of firmware that will work with their systems. I'm already using a modem that I own. I didn't lease a modem from them. No telling if that would have been, if that would have solved this problem over the course of many years. It's obviously cheaper to just buy a modem. Well, I don't know if it's obvious, but it is true over many years. So for once a year, and then if this was happening every day, I would write a cron job and I would ping the gateway. But once a year or so, and I've talked to them on the phone. They've been generally helpful. So the Cox Cox Cable Internet Services people in the Vegas area, I would say they're pretty good. I've had no issue, nothing worth, major complaints about. Now I will say, CenturyLink is supposed to have fiber optic network connections. There are some people that have had them. They've reported good experience, but their deployment areas are so small. The notion of getting a fiber connection was, basically fantasy. So no fiber where I live, where I would need in capital letters such a connection. The CenturyLink not fiber connection, so their cable modems or DSL, whatever they use, have always gotten bad reviews. So I figured, okay, well, it's going to be Cox Cable. And again, so no big problems. We only have the two major providers here. I think somebody does DSL in some areas. It's been a while since I researched this, but cable modem has been fine. It's lived up to my needs. But now Google Fiber looks like it will become available in larger areas. All that dark fiber that was paid for by government funding with a sleight of hand trick from telecom companies. So dark fiber, whatever other fiber is around. So Google Fiber allegedly making its way into the Vegas area. I think I added myself to an email update if it becomes available where I actually reside. So we'll see if that goes anywhere. I think it would be cool to have a fiber connection. I don't know that it would be worth having a fiber connection. Who doesn't want to download everything on the internet, every movie ever created from every time period or whatever that Quest commercial was. Somewhere there's a collection of those Quest commercials. If I can find them, I'll add them to the show notes. But the promise of fiber is interesting because once you start downloading fiber, nothing is ever fast enough. So once you have attained, just like I was saying earlier, if you could have everyone that uses their modem today in their phone, right, you're getting 5G speeds or 4G LTE speeds, which are really good. I mean, it's really amazing how far that's come for consumer level products. If you were forced to run at 14.4 or slower, oh my goodness, there'd be total insanity. I remember I was working at Intel. I was in Toulouse one time. I was talking to the development team there. And one of the people that was in the IT group, like developer IT, so he was working on build systems and all. He said, the response time on this one system is several seconds and people are getting upset. And I said, has no one here ever used a modem and had to wait a minute for an image to download one line at a time? But no, that's a different time. So we all have access to very fast internet connections now, data connections, and we have come to expect that. So as soon as fiber becomes, I'm not going to say the norm, but as it becomes prevalent, the ability to move data that fast will be quite interesting for two reasons. One, if you have fiber in your home or if you have access to fiber on a daily basis, suddenly not having access to your fiber connection will be noticeable. It will be like a missing limb. You'll be put off by this. Where is my internet connection? Everything's taking so long. There's a Dane Cook bit about how if you had instant teleportation, then the DMV, visiting the DMV would still take like 4 seconds when everything else is instant. Haha. But yeah, so once you are using on a regular basis, it sets your expectations. But as well, if you say you're the only fiber connection on the block, just like my rotten story. So you have a fiber connection, just like they had a T1 connection. But you are interacting with people who still have their slow, dismal gigabit modems on their cable modem connections. So now you have so much more bandwidth than they do, or the services you're accessing are using quote unquote slower technologies. So now your fiber connection is faster than what you want to get. So now, I'm still getting only, whatever speeds. So until the internet can satisfy both ends of the connectivity perception, I guess, there will always be room for why can't this be faster? And it is amazing how much data is being transferred. I mean, it's more data than there is because people just resend stuff. So there isn't this much data on the planet, and we're sending all of it all the time. It's quite insane. And I'm hand waving there. I may be wrong, but it's a tremendous amount of data. When we all have fiber, we will all be waiting for the next thing. Basically, until there is no longer a delay between notion, action, and response. Until when you say, "Oh, the data's here already." You haven't even said what you're looking for because you'll have a direct, hopefully not neural link, because who knows what that is. But until your system can respond to your whims and notions before you are completely aware of them and have the response for you, until that happens, plenty of room for speed improvements and charging more money. Equipment upgrades and monthly service fees abound. So that's been my data connectivity journey. I have to say, I think having experienced this whole time now, there are people that were using, they would literally have cups, a little rubber seal around them that they would attach to their phone handset. They were made for the classic, probably if you've seen an icon for a phone, the classic Bakelite handset, very solid. You could probably kill somebody with that thing. So you'd put the cups on there, and then there were cradles that you could rest the phone in, so it would seal around the earpiece and the microphone. There are people that they could make their own modems. I saw somebody make in Byte magazine, remember Byte? Probably not. Somebody made an acoustic modem out of like plastic cups with some tubing, like a real acoustic modem. It's crazy. So you're getting, 110 baud. You're getting maybe 50 baud. You're getting maybe below typing speed. But it was an interesting time. And to be able to take your stack of punch cards and send them over your 110 baud acoustic modem, it was an exciting time because that's how we got here today. And I don't know that is fully appreciated, but to have that experience, and whenever you hear people complaining that it should be faster, it should be this, it should be that, they probably don't have that experience of having been there, done that at ridiculously slow, but still world-changing speeds. So, I read somewhere that a long time ago that this slow data could be part of a morning. Like I cannot remember who wrote this, but something like, well, I get up in the morning, I turn on my computer, I dial up, and I start downloading my emails and whatnot, and I go and make coffee. So part of the morning ritual was to fill in the time of this world-changing at the time use of internet connection technologies and communications and messaging and emailing and all that. But saying, okay, well, while my computer is doing that, I can multitask. I can have my computer do some work for me, and I'm going to go make coffee. So this is still a valid mindset. It's something to think about. Does everything have to be here now? I don't think so. It's nice to be able to have stutter-free, multi-participant video conferencing without frame drops, without the stuttering, with good audio, good video. I don't know if you're not doing 4K, but certainly these are things that would have been unimaginable back in those dial-up modem days. So really interesting time. By the way, I worked at TrueVision, which was an AT&T spinoff, and their entire mission in life was to come up with video compression technologies for video teleconferencing. So that's a story for another time. This has been an interesting walk down memory lane at slow speeds. The joy of, what's funny? MP3, the Fraunhofer psychoacoustic compression that people still use today, downloading MP3s. Given the state of our network, you really don't need MP3s to enable, high quality audio downloads. The bit rate for MP3s, VBR, variable bitrate compression, you'd want it to be, I can't remember what it was. I cannot remember. It was a lot of bits. 128K, I think, was the bare minimum. 196 was preferred. The higher the better. That means you're losing less data. The higher the data rate, the more data you're able to retain. Maybe it's more of a storage question, but yeah, we no longer really need to do MP3s. I could have a FLAC, a lossless audio. I can't remember what the F stands for, but it's a lossless audio codec. You could upload FLAC files, WAV files. There's really no reason other than space considerations and tradition and maybe backward compatibility for older devices. But yeah, the ability to move data around as fast as we can, and audio is not big. Video files, again, then you're getting into the need for compression, definitely. But audio files, there's really no reason to not have completely uncompressed, high quality audio for audio programs such as this. And on that note, I will remind you, without obligation to pay anything, that my buymeacoffee.com/Dan Hugo profile is where you can find links to my various projects and programs. Check it out. Again, don't have to pay, but if you do buy me a coffee, you will literally be funding the purchase of coffee beans or other coffee devices, equipment, accessories. And ko-fi.com/Dan Hugo for whatever I end up using that for. And I will look for those Quest commercials and try to add it to the show notes. If I do, great. If not, Quest was spelled Kwest. Sorry, Qwest. Quest fiber optics commercials, probably. And that is where we'll leave it today on this Tuesday, March 12th, 2024, here in kind of sunny, yes, sunny Las Vegas. Cheers.